There are literally dozens of problems. But the challenge that Bill and other members of the board are going to face is this. How do you identify the most lethal alligators, the ones that are there to bite you right now, while you don't lose track of the greater need to bring reform into the system? And I would suggest to you that it's the superintendent's contract. That's the alpha and omega of reform. It's the superintendent's contract. So you've got to fight these other battles, but you have to find a way to deal with the superintendent's contract. And I think it's important to understand how we got to where we are in terms of the superintendent's contract. Texas Association of School Boards, Texas Association of School Administrators, favored law firms like Thompson and Horton, superintendent search firms, and they all play a role in this system. It is as if they have combined to create an alien spaceship, and out of this process, they deposit superintendents at schools on a methodical plan to keep the system safe. The last thing in the world that TASA or TASB or the superintendent search firms want to have is a superintendent of schools who would be disloyal to the system that put them there. They don't want that. And so I want you to imagine for a second that Susan, me, and Larry are the finalists for the superintendent's job at your school district, and you're all on the interviewing panel. Now, what you need to do is tell Susan and Larry to go away, and 21 days later, you're going to name me the superintendent. You have told your finalists to go away. You do not have a contract in place, and state law blesses that. You have to be smart enough to figure out how to put your body in the track of such public policy insanity. And that's what we want to address tonight. Imagine the notion of telling all your candidates to go away, and now you're going to negotiate a contract. Who is on top in that environment? Who is represented? The superintendent or the people? And that's what's happened in public education on front after front after front. The board has ceded the people's interest for the system's interest. And there are three elements, and I have never been shy about discussing law in front of lawyers. So if they want to correct me to maintain their bar code or their bar status, then they're free to do that. But there are three components that have to be looked at, and that is extension, lawful directives, and evaluation. And on this front, is there anyone with an IQ above 22 that thinks that the school board did not willfully and deliberately extend the current superintendent's contract back in February prior to the financial turmoil that we have seen ensue? That is part of the system that we have to take on. Now, what I'm going to talk about for the rest of the way is not the budget problems. Those are actually fairly easy to deal with, okay? I'm not going to talk about the construction. Those are actually pretty easy questions to deal with. Give me the budget, and I can tell you within 30 minutes what your solutions are if you're actually interested in accountability. What I'm going to talk about for the rest of my remarks is how do you bring the superintendent's contract back to an equilibrium such that the classroom and the board restores its sanctity and puts the superintendent contractually in the right place. It's important to understand, and all of this is going to be, the things that I'm going to point out are dealing with the classroom. It's important to point out and to really internalize and understand what drives administrative and curriculum control over the classrooms. And it is a principle that goes back 200 plus years to the founding of our country. And it is, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Now, that is a wonderful principle to accept when you're talking about the founding of a nation and ascribing the rights of humanity to a higher power, that there is something bigger and better and more noble than all of us individually. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That is a principle that we embrace as loyal Americans and who believe in freedom. But when you allow staggering levels of administrative arrogance to impose policies and dictates on the classroom under the notion that they hold these truths to be self-evident, what happens is the destruction of the classroom. And I want to address some of those specific issues. And we're going to go through about 8 to 9.